So today we're taking a deep dive into something really heavy, a racial slur incident at Gettysburg College.
Definitely.
And, you know, what makes this one hit hard is that it, like, happened within the swim team.
Right.
Like, you know, sports team. You're supposed to be safe with your teammates.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is not just like a news story. We're going deep on this.
A deep dive.
We've got some articles from NPR, ABC 27 News, CBS, and AP.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, say right off the bat, this isn't about a heated argument between rivals or anything like that. This, cuts to the core of, belonging and safety.
Right. So, like, the basic facts are already jarring enough.
Yeah.
A student is off the roster and no longer enrolled after being held responsible for carving a racial slur.
Wow.
But here's where it gets even more disturbing. This was directed at a teammate during a gathering of the men's swim team.
And you really have to consider the power dynamic. When the victim's family points out he was the only person of color present. I mean, that vulnerability adds a whole other layer, a layer of complexity to an already horrifying situation.
And the CBS article mentions the perpetrator used a box cutter.
A box cutter.
A box cutter.
Wow.
That detail really, stuck with me, right?
Right.
It's not just like a spur of the moment, like heat of the moment.
Right.
It suggests a level of premeditation that is chilling.
Yeah, it really highlights the unsettling reality that, hate crimes aren't always just these, impulsive acts of anger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can stem from these deep-seated, prejudices.
Yeah, and to make it even more complex, 2 students were initially dismissed from the team, but only the one found responsible is no longer at the college.
And we see, as we kind of dig into the articles from ABC 27 and such, that the police weren't even involved in pressing charges.
Really?
Yeah, the Gettysburg police chief stated that the victim opted to address the situation through the college's own disciplinary system. And this is something I'm curious about. What are your thoughts on, why someone in that position might choose that path?
Yeah, it's tough, right? On one hand, you want to see justice served in a very public way.
Right.
Sending a clear message.
Sure.
But on the other hand, navigating the legal system, especially with something as emotionally charged as this,
Oh, absolutely.
can be incredibly daunting. Maybe there's a sense of seeking, resolution and healing within the college community itself.
And that's what the family's statement, particularly in the NPR piece, seems to focus on. They're calling for this to be a transformative moment for Gettysburg College.
Wow.
Even in the face of such pain, they're seeking something bigger than just punishment.
That, to me, speaks volumes about their strength and hope for real change,
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, what does a transformative moment actually look like in this case?
Right. Is it about disciplinary action alone, or does it require a deeper look at the campus culture that allowed this to happen in the first place?
Yeah.
Remember, the college president himself, quoted in that CBS article, acknowledged the impact this has had on their ongoing efforts to build an inclusive environment.
Okay, so we've got the incident itself, the chilling details, the attempts to seek accountability. But what about the ripple effects?
Yeah.
This isn't just about one act on one campus.
Exactly.
This makes you think, how many times have we heard about an incident like this?
Right.
And wondered, what's it going to take for real lasting change to happen?
Yeah, and I think this is where it gets really interesting, right? Gettysburg's being forced to look in the mirror.
Right.
Their stated goals of creating an inclusive environment are now being put to the test.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say that you value diversity,
Right.
but how do you actually respond when that value is so blatantly disregarded?
It's easy to issue statements, to promise action.
Right.
But what concrete steps can Gettysburg College take to show genuine commitment to change?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? Is it about implementing stricter disciplinary measures, investing in more robust diversity training, creating safe spaces for open dialogue about race and identity?
What about the swim team itself?
Yeah.
Because they were the ones who reported the incident.
Exactly.
Which suggests they're not tolerating this behavior.
Right.
But how do they rebuild trust and create a culture where this kind of hate is unthinkable?
Well, and I think it goes beyond just addressing the actions of this one individual, right?
Right.
It's about looking at the culture that allowed that individual to think that behavior was okay.
Right.
Were there those subtle, even unconscious biases that contributed to this environment?
You've got me thinking about all those microaggressions that we talk about.
Yeah.
Those seemingly small, often unintentional acts of prejudice that can create a hostile environment.
Yeah.
Could those have played a role here?
Oh, absolutely.
Even if no one realized it at the time.
Absolutely. And, while this incident was overt and deliberate, it's important to acknowledge that, these types of events don't occur in a vacuum.
Right.
They are often the culmination of countless smaller acts of bias and discrimination that have been allowed to fester.
And that's why this deep dive feels so important.
Yeah.
It's about connecting those dots, understanding the systemic nature of these issues,
right,
and recognizing that they extend far beyond this one college campus.
Exactly. This isn't just about Gettysburg College. This is about looking at our own communities, our workplaces, even our personal relationships.
Right.
And asking ourselves how we can create environments where, everyone feels safe, respected, and valued.
That statement from the family about this being a transformative moment really stuck with me.
Yeah.
But transformation requires action.
Right.
So what do you think are the most critical steps that institutions like Gettysburg and even society as a whole need to take to create lasting change?
Well, I think it's multifaceted, right? It's about education. It's about understanding the history of systemic racism, recognizing our own implicit biases.
Wow.
It's about fostering open and honest dialogue about these issues, even when it's difficult and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's about, I think, fundamentally holding each other accountable, challenging prejudice and discrimination whenever and wherever we see it.
And I think it's also about amplifying the voices of marginalized communities, listening to their experiences and understanding the impact of these issues on their lives.
Absolutely. And it's about empowering those communities to be active participants in shaping the solutions.
Yeah, it's interesting that the family filed complaints with both the NAACP and the Pennsylvania Commission on Human Relations.
Oh, wow.
We learned that from ABC 27.
Wow.
So they're seeking accountability and justice outside of just the college.
Yeah, it feels like they're drawing a line in the sand, This isn't just an internal matter.
Right.
It's about holding a system accountable that they feel has failed them.
Exactly. They're forcing a broader conversation.
Yeah.
And that's often where real change begins,
Right. Yeah.
by challenging that status quo and demanding better.
So we've covered a lot, right? We talked about the incident itself, the details that make it so disturbing, the responses. Right.
But I keep coming back to the victor's family and their hope for a transformative moment. What do you think needs to happen for this to be more than just a news cycle at Gettysburg?
That's the question that keeps me up at night. Because true transformation isn't like a checklist that you can just tick off.
Right.
It's a fundamental shift.
Right.
In mindset, in culture, in the very fabric of a community.
Wow.
It's about acknowledging the pain and the harm that has been caused,
right,
but also going beyond apologies and taking concrete steps towards repair and reconciliation.
So what might that look like?
So for Gettysburg College, it's about going beyond just addressing this one incident.
Okay.
It's about examining their policies, their practices, their curriculum, even their hiring practices through a lens of equity and inclusion.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where everyone, no matter their race or background, feels seen, heard, and valued.
And it's not just about Gettysburg College, is it?
No.
This incident, as isolated as it might seem,
right,
reflects a larger societal issue.
Absolutely.
What message does this send about the state of race relations in America, and what can we all learn from this?
You're right. This is bigger than just one college campus.
Right.
It's a stark reminder that we still have so far to go in dismantling systemic racism and creating a truly just and equitable society.
Right.
And we all have a role to play in that, right?
Right.
We need to educate ourselves, challenge our own biases, and be upstanders, not bystanders, when we witness injustice.
So as we kind of wrap up here, what's one thought you want to leave our listener with? What should they be grappling with long after this deep dive is over?
Well, we've talked a lot about transformation today.
Yeah.
But transformation isn't a spectator sport.
Right.
It requires action.
Right.
So I would challenge our listeners to consider, what is one concrete action you can take today in your own life to be a part of the solution? How can you be a force for positive change in your community?
It's a powerful question, and one I hope we all ask ourselves, because change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It happens one conversation, one action, one step at a time.
That's right.
And it starts with each and every one of us.